Hey guys, all right, so today I'm gonna get real with you and I'm gonna talk to you about what I went through when my son went to prison, not once, but twice. Hey everybody, my name is Velez and I am here to help you understand how to level up your life, to improve your self-concept, reprogram your mind, and not let your past shit hold you back from getting everything that you want. Okay, so I look a little crazy because I am on my way to the gym. It is Memorial Day today as I'm filming this, and my gym doesn't open for another hour, so I was like, let me go into work and shoot this video. So I wanted to share this because I haven't really talked about this publicly. I did a video a while back, maybe a year ago, where I talked about how I manifested an outcome of a family member who was facing, 7 to 10 years in prison to be let off, and that's exactly what I did, and that was my son. So the story is I had my son at 19. When I got pregnant with my son, the person that got me pregnant basically was uninvolved, didn't really want much to do with him. And during my pregnancy, I manifested an amazing man to come in my life, and he really was there for my son, loved my son, was there with me my whole pregnancy. He was there in labor with me. He adopted my son. He raised my son. He is my son's father. And my son knows the truth about the biological versus the man who raised him, was actually there for him. And, I really created that for him because I didn't have a good father at all. He was a drunk, abusive, and really not in my life consistently at all. And I grew up in foster care. So for me, it was really important for my son to have a good relationship with his dad. And that's why even we were married, I was with him for 10 years, and we divorced when my son was 8, and we stayed friends. And when he got remarried, I invited his wife to the parties and birthday things and things like that, and I'm still cool with both of them to this day because my son was more important to me than any animosity or beef I had with my ex-husband about him not being the best husband, but he certainly was an amazing father. So we provided stability. My son never went without. There was no abuse in the home. There was, normal levels of dysfunction because obviously me growing up the way that I did, I'm sure that transpired in some of the ways that I parented, absolutely. But he didn't have anything crazy, but he started going down the wrong path when he was about 15. And for me, because I grew up in foster care, because I don't have a good relationship with either of my parents, and I'm an only child, having my son at 19, I didn't know that I had these issues subconsciously programmed in me. This was the first time I felt unconditional love in my life. So when my son started turning around 15, we were so close his whole life, and he started really going down a wrong path, and nothing that I would do, nothing that his father would do was stopping him. And we tried everything, and it wasn't working, and I had to sit here and watch my son go down this destructive path, and he was getting in trouble and hanging around the wrong people and turning to criminal acts, and it was a fucking nightmare. And I was just becoming a therapist, I was like, oh my gosh, dealing with all of this, so I had a lot of stress, and thank God that I knew fundamentally that my son would be okay, but I didn't, when I was going through it in the beginning, that is not how I felt. I was obviously worried and concerned as a parent. So fast forward, he was just, out of control, in and out of juvie, in and out of detentions, running away from home, causing a lot of problems in my house. And it was not pleasant. Like, I didn't even recognize this person anymore. Like, this was not the kid that I raised. And it really kicked up a lot of my own abandonment issues because, like I said, this is the first time, I'm going to get emotional. This was the first time that I felt unconditional love, and to see my son, this baby that I loved and raised, go through this path was so hard for me as a mom to watch. And I felt like I was losing him, and I was so scared of what he would turn out to be. So I was numbing myself. I saw myself drinking more because, he wasn't around, and I had so much pain in me. And this is going back, oh my gosh, like 10, 13 years ago. There was so much pain in me. And so I was avoiding being alone. Like I was, finding myself going out to dinner, just being around people as much as I could because I couldn't stand to sit with my own shit. I was trying to run from the pain of what I was going through when it came to dealing with my son. So about 6-8 months of that, I had a hard conversation with myself and I was like, bitch, this is not gonna look good for you either. Like, you're destroying yourself and not taking care of yourself as you're watching your son self-destruct. And it's like, you have to be the role model. You have to inspire. You have to be bigger than these circumstances. This is not okay for you. This is not the path that you're supposed to go down. And this doesn't teach him anything. So I really had to take a hard look at me, and I really had to face my abandonment issues that were being triggered. I had to deal with the emotional pain, and I had to fucking take care of myself. So I really cut back on the drinking. I wasn't an alcoholic by any means, but I definitely was, abusing it and binging it at times, and I had to take a hard look at myself. I ended up really just working on myself, doing a lot of inner work. I stopped going out. I would just sit in my fucking pain every night, because when I left work, I was home alone having to deal with me, and I embraced that. And it was one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had in my life that long ago, where I really started to heal my shit, where I had to really face, my abandonment issues and start that process of it. So having said all that, it was definitely a whirlwind, and I did a lot of inner work on myself, and all the shit that I teach you guys, I was doing to myself. I wasn't doing it. I teach you guys more than what I knew at that time, because at that time there was no YouTube like this. I didn't even know who Neville was. I didn't even understand on this level, people are mirrors to us, and deeper inner work on myself. But I started the process nevertheless, and I saw massive changes that were positive in my own life. So I had to get very tough, with my son. And basically, once my son turned 18, I was like, you're on your own, because he was not conforming still. He was not a virgin who was, doing the right thing. And I really did know and trust in my heart, especially because I was so clear-minded now, because I wasn't distracting myself from my pain. I wasn't running away from the pain and hurt inside of me. I knew he was going to be okay. And let me tell you, there were nights where I didn't even hear from my son. I didn't even know where the fuck he was. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. And you know how I put myself to sleep at night? I would remind myself, he's alive, Kim, because if he were dead, you would have got a phone call. He's been arrested multiple times. They know your number. They know your address. Like, you would have been notified. And that was literally many nights how I put myself to sleep. There is a silver lining to this story. So going through that process was hard. It was years. And then my son got arrested. He decided he wanted to, be a street pharmacist and make money. And I was just like, come on, bro, we're going to do better than this. Like, no, this is not okay. And he would get caught and get arrested, and he was stacking up felonies after felonies, and he would do local jail time, and he was in and out of jail. And then finally, prison came calling, and he went to prison, and he didn't serve years. He would do 14 months, 12 months, but it was a revolving door. It was, at least 2 or 3 times. And throughout that process, I still was there for him, but I did it in a really loving, supportive way, where I did not enable his bullshit, and I didn't enable his bad choices, but I had his back. So when he was in prison, he thought he was going to call me every day because he was bored. And I'm like, no, you're not calling me every day. I'm over here working. I'm helping people. I was working as a therapist at a treatment center, helping people, to change their lives and shit. And I'm like, just because you made a bad choice and you're in prison, you can't call me every day. You want to call me once a week? Let me know what day. I'll schedule the time, make sure that we can have a heart-to-heart. And I really had to set some boundaries with him, because I didn't want him to have this comfortable experience in prison. I didn't want to fucking have it like, whatever, it wasn't a big ass deal. And I wanted him to do the inner work to self-reflect. So I sent him books on how a man thinketh. I sent him books on going within and changing the story, and I set my own boundaries that I did for myself as well as him. And over time, we always supported him when he came out. If he was doing the right thing, I had his back. If he wasn't doing the right thing, I didn't have his back. I still loved him. He knew I was there for him, called him out on his bullshit, and I had to be real with him. And let me tell you, he didn't like me as a person for many years, and I was okay with that, because when I worked with drug addicts, they didn't like me either as a therapist, calling them out on their bullshit, because I was the truth teller to them, and they weren't ready to change, and they didn't want to hear the truth. They wanted people around them to enable them and to let them off the hook. And I wasn't doing that for myself. I wasn't going to do it for my son, and I wasn't going to do it for the clients that I worked with. So I was okay with the tension in the relationship. I was okay with the fact that, he didn't want to be around me a lot, because I wasn't co-signing him. I wasn't allowing and just accepting, yeah, okay, great, just keep ruining your life and make really shitty decisions and hurt yourself and others. That's the way to live. No, I was like, this is bullshit. You are better than this. Fucking better, and there's no reason for you to go down this path. You're literally choosing it every day. And you don't have to, because I'm here, your dad's here, he has extended family. There was a lot of support and love of people doing the right thing every day. So all I could do in that time was work on me, work on me, work on me. I kept getting up every day, living my best life. And people used to look at me like I was crazy. And it was such a gift I had when I was doing therapy, because when I worked with the parents of watching their adult children self-destruct with addiction and going in and out of jail, I'm like, hello, I get it, and my son wasn't an addict, so I didn't have to deal with that, but the behavior and the lifestyle he was living was definitely, not dangerous. It was definitely not a path where he was going to thrive and succeed and do well for himself. So I could really emphasize with a lot of the pain the parents were going through, and I practiced what the fuck I preach, and I still do to this day. And I had to really, hold the parents accountable too, is you have to take care of you. You can't change them. We could change our thoughts and perspectives of how we see them, but you can't interrupt a version of someone that is on a self-destructive path. We can do interventions. We can offer them different ways out. But if they don't want to do it, they're not going to fucking do it. And so you have to accept that that is the version that is current, and you do your own work, and you heal your own shit, and you don't support the version of someone who's killing themselves, or I should say enable, because enable just fuels the addictive process. It fuels the bad behaviors. It fuels and perpetuates the poor choices. You don't let people off the hook that you love, and you start by not letting yourself off the hook. So I had to practice it with myself, practice it with my son, and then I could really fucking model and show the people that I was working with of how to do it for themselves and the reward they feel, and how it would support and actually hinder and make their loved ones who were struggling in active addiction, just making really bad decisions, to really have more consequences that might wake them the fuck up to want to change their life. And that's usually what happened 85 to 90% of the time when I worked with the clients, when I was working and treating people in active addiction and supporting the families. And it happened in my own life. So my son did a couple stints in prison, and then he got out, and I really saw the change. So I knew when he would get out, I could just see who he was, the version he was, and he would, if he didn't change, he just went back and did the same cycle. That's what we do all the time. But this time there was something very different with him. I saw a new version of him. I knew that there was an inner change that happened within him, because he got tired of his own bullshit. He got tired of the way that he was living. So fast forward, he was living with me, he was following my rules, he was doing very well, and then he was drinking a little bit, and I didn't really like that, but he was a man, and as long as he wasn't doing it in a disrespectful way in my house, I couldn't stop him. He was over 21, and there was a local corner store that he used to go get his beer from, and he went in there. Now, this is a 21-year-old kid, and there was like a 40-something-year-old drunk man who has a record of being violent with his wife and things, and not a good guy, and he was shit-faced drunk, and my son walked into an altercation where the older man was, antagonizing the store clerk and really getting violent and hostile with them, and the clerk had called the police, and my son intervened on the clerk's behalf because he knew them and they were cool, and a fight ensued between my son and this drunken 40-something-year-old man. And anyways, it was not a good thing, and my son did a stupid thing, and he got arrested. And so I knew, though, that he didn't deserve what they were saying because he was attacked and defended himself. So I just knew that he was going to beat this case. And that was the only story I held in my mind. And I just kept working on myself because I knew my son had changed. And my son, even through that process change, he was still working. He didn't lose his job. He wasn't drinking. He decided, you know what, I don't really need to drink like that. This is stupid, because if I wasn't drinking, I probably would have had better judgment and maybe not intervened. And he just really just kept upping his game and turning himself around better and better and better. And I saw it day in and day out. And for 2 years, this court case hung over our fucking heads because then COVID hit. So this court case happened. My son was already out of prison for I think he was out of prison for 6 months or 4 months or something like that. And in the state of Florida, if you are out of prison, if you were just released and it was a felony, if you're charged with a violent crime under I think it's 6 months or a year of being released, it's an automatic sentence you get. And this automatic sentence my son was facing was 5 to 7 years, possibly 10. And so I just could not accept that, because I'm like, fuck this shit. My kid was changing his life. I'm like, this is not the reality I want for myself. So we got a lawyer, we did everything. My son just kept the straight and fucking narrow. And we had so much evidence throughout this 2 years, because then COVID hit. So all the courts got, backlogged, and they were changing prosecutors left and right in our county. And just cases were, this case just got put on the back burner over and over. So we just kept affirming and assuming that this was working out in his favor, that the delay meant that they really didn't care about the case, that they knew it was bullshit, that they didn't want to take it to trial. And my son was like, you know what, we'll go to fucking trial. And every time they try to offer him a plea deal, he said no, because he said the truth will come out. This is not whatever the person is saying happened is not correct, and I know this, and so I will fucking take it to trial and risk it, because the truth will come out. And they knew that, and so finally after 2 years they dropped it, because they knew it was fucking bullshit. So that was 3 years ago, and my son's still thriving, doing good. There's been no issues at all, and in fact he just keeps turning into a better and better man. And I'm just so happy that he's back in my life. But the point of this story is so many points. One is, you have to fucking work on you. So many of you are so fucking worried about, your SPs with a fucking third party. And I get it, because I went through all that shit too. Or you're worried about, you're not seeing the evidence in your 3D reality, and your life isn't even really that bad. Some of you, your life does feel really bad, and my heart goes out to that, because I fucking get that. You have to decide, no matter what is happening around you, that you're going to value yourself. You're going to work on yourself so you can inspire and lift up everyone around you. Because if everyone is a fucking mirror to you, then if you're over here self-destructing inside, then the people around you are going to stay away from you, or you're going to keep manifesting in versions of people that are not leveling up, that are self-destructing, that are not doing the best inside. So you have to decide and not allow the 3D to control you. We did not allow the 3D to control you. I went through the worst pain that any mother could go through, other than losing, their child dying. It felt like my child was dead, because I lost my relationship. I lost everything I knew with him, and I was witnessing him self-destruct over a really long period of time. But I held the fucking faith that because I raised him and I knew how he was raised, that he was going to choose better for himself, that this was not his fucking future. But in the interim, I had to take care of me. I had to rise up and be a better version of myself and deal with my pain, because if I couldn't even fucking deal with that, then how the fuck am I going to tell my son to deal with it, right? So I wanted to inspire him, because instead of just telling, I fucking do, and I become. So you have to do the same. Nothing around you is permanent. Nothing around you is, the end all be all. It can feel like it because of how you're choosing to deal with it, and how you're choosing to process it in your mind, and your self-perception of the situation, and your self-concept in relation to it. Stop running from you. Do the fucking inner work so you can manifest in a whole different life. You level yourself up in everyone around you. So I went through it as a mother. It was the hardest thing of my life, but it was such a gift in so many ways. My son is amazing. My son has really learned and grown so much. Now he can be such a positive influence to others if that's what he chooses to do with his own life. But especially for his son, he is such an amazing father and there for his kid, and chose himself and his son to not live that way, right? And be better for them. And for me, like, him doing that was the best thing for me, because it forced me to have the one thing stripped from me that was external, that was giving me unconditional love, so I could understand I had to give it to myself. My son is not here to, be my savior. I had to be my savior. And there's a lot of parents that I've worked with as a therapist, and I, have just met in my life, that they fucking dump their shit on their kids and make their kids be their fucking savior, and that they need their kids to love them and to live their life, for them, instead of living their own fucking life and allowing their child, when they grow up to be an adult, to be their individual self, to rise to the occasion, to, really learn how to love themselves, because they're not, constantly having to fucking validate their mother or validate their father, or give their mother a sense of purpose or their father a sense of purpose. Don't dump that shit on your kids, guys. I have worked with them as a therapist where these adults grow up and then the parents are coming to me in therapy because the kids hate them. The kids fucking resent them because the mother never did anything with her own life. The father didn't do anything with himself. And the way they get their worth and value is by controlling their children and making their children have to, be in their life every day and constantly call them and talk to them and whatever. And I'm not saying people can have close relationships that are healthy. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about over-enmeshment. I'm talking about really putting the burden on your people in your life, whether it's a specific person in your love life, whether it's your adult children or your young children, whether it's other family members or friends, to validate your worth and make you feel loved and good enough. It's not healthy for them, and it's not healthy for you, and it's not how you fucking get what you want. So you gotta dig in deep. You need to do the inner work that I keep telling you about. It's the only way to get any kind of fucking result that's long lasting and sustainable in your life. So I wanted to share that with you because I haven't really talked about it, and I know there's probably people out there who've struggled. I meet them all the time who've struggled with, their kids going the wrong way, or their adult children making really bad decisions. And this is what I did to manifest a whole different outcome for me and my son. And you can do the fucking same with anything in your life. If I can go through that, I can go through anything. And that's why also when I leveled up, when I understood my own triggers when it came to my specific person and just people I was involved with in my romantic life, once it clicked for me, I understood what I had to do. I had to do the same process when I was going through with my son. I had to do it with me on another level. And that's how I am the version I am now today, who is no longer identifying and being a version of herself who's needy and doesn't feel good enough in her love life and doesn't settle for fucking bullshit in her love life. And you can do the same. All right, I love you guys. I hope this inspired someone. See ya.